They met in the spring of 1884, in a town so small the map didn't bother giving it a proper name. It was one of them places where the wind carried more stories than the people, and every settler wore their past like a coat that wouldn't come off, no matter how hot the sun got. Clara Lively had come to the edge of the Colorado Territory looking for a new beginning, dragging with her a battered trunk, a piano key from her mother's parlor back east, and a heart stitched together with more hope than sense. She was a schoolmarm by trade, sharp with numbers and gentle with children, but the weight she carried was one of loss, the kind that don't ever fully leave you be. Jonas Fletcher rode into her life the way most trouble does, quiet-like at first, with a smile that didn't quite touch his eyes. He claimed to be a cattleman, though he never said where his land lay. Folks in town liked him well enough, strong hands, soft words, but Clara saw something deeper in him. Maybe it was the way he never let his guard down, or how he always looked east when the wind blew. Their courtship was fast, like most were back then. There wasn't time to dally with affection. Winter always came too quick in those parts, and no one wanted to face it alone. He asked her to marry him on a Sunday morning, while they stood outside the clapboard church, the preacher's words still echoing in their ears. She said yes, though a small part of her hesitated, something about the way he flinched when a child tugged at his coat. They married beneath a cottonwood tree, Clara in a dress 2 sizes too big, borrowed from the widowed blacksmith's daughter, and Jonas in a coat that smelled faintly of ash. The townsfolk brought pies and string music, and for a while, everything seemed right. Clara even caught herself, smiling without realizing it. But it was in the silence of the night that the questions came. Jonas kept a locked chest beneath the floorboards, said it held family keepsakes, and every now and then, when he thought her asleep, she'd hear him whisper a name. Daniel. She never asked who Daniel was. She figured if he wanted her to know, he'd tell her. But secrets got weight, and weight has a way of making things sink. Then one day, near the start of fall, Clara found a letter, tucked inside an old ledger she was sorting in the barn. It was faded, but still legible. To my son, Daniel Fletcher. The handwriting wasn't Jonas's, but the signature at the bottom made her heart stutter. From your father, Jonas. The wind howled that evening, rattling the windows like it wanted in. Clara stood by the fire, the letter clenched in her hand, waiting for Jonas to come home from the fields. And when he did, she didn't say a word, just held out the paper with shaking fingers. Jonas looked at it, looked at her, and sat down slow, like a man who'd known this moment was coming all along. I was gonna tell you, he said, voice low. Clara didn't speak. The fire cracked between them. She died, he whispered. His mother. And I couldn't raise him then. Left him with kin. But his voice caught. I kept him secret, 'cause I was afraid it'd chase you off. Clara stared at the man she thought she knew. Her heart ached, not from betrayal, but from the sudden, dizzying understanding that love, no matter how perfect it seems, always carries a shadow. And somewhere out there, walking or waiting, was a boy. Hers by marriage, his by blood. That night, Clara didn't sleep. The bed they shared felt too big, too quiet. Jonas had gone out to the porch after she read the letter, and he hadn't come back in for hours. When he did, she pretended to be asleep, though every breath she took felt like it scraped against her ribs. At first light, she rose and stoked the fire. The scent of coffee filled the cabin, but Jonas didn't stir. She knew where he'd gone before the sun had even fully lifted over the ridge, down the old path toward the cedar grove, where he liked to sit alone. Clara wrapped her shawl tight around her shoulders and followed. She found him there, knees pulled up, hands clasped tight like he was praying to a god he didn't quite trust. You gonna tell me about him now? She asked, her voice steady. Jonas nodded, didn't look at her, but his voice was clearer than she'd expected. Daniel was born in Missouri, right before the war ended. His mama, her name was Ruth, she died in childbirth. I was young, stupid. I didn't know how to raise a baby, and I didn't have no one but my older sister Miriam. She took him in. Clara sat down beside him. The ground was cold, but she didn't flinch. You never went back? She asked. I sent money. Letters. Visited once when he was real small. He called Miriam Ma, and I didn't have the heart to confuse him. Clara's heart twisted. And now? Jonas hesitated. Now he's 14. And he's coming here. That made her breath catch. He wrote me last month. Jonas continued. Miriam's husband passed, and she's heading west to live with her folks in San Francisco. She asked if I'd take Daniel. Says he wants to know his real father. Clara stared at the pine needles beneath her boots. When were you going to tell me? I was trying to find the words, Jonas muttered. But words ain't never come easy to me. Clara rose. She looked down at him, her face unreadable. You should have tried harder. Back at the cabin, she poured 2 mugs of coffee and set one down for him on the table. Even though he was still out in the grove, she sat, stared at the fire, and tried to picture a boy she'd never met. A boy who, by law and marriage, was soon to call her stepmother. A boy who'd lived his whole life in the shadow of secrets. 3 days passed before the telegram came. Jonas read it in silence, then handed it to her. Arriving Tuesday. Noon train. Daniel. Clara nodded once, set the paper down, and said nothing. On the morning of the boy's arrival, she wore her Sunday dress, not because it was fancy, but because it was the only one without mended sleeves. Jonas shaved, a rare thing, and buttoned his collar all the way up. They rode into town in a silence that felt heavy, like it belonged to something bigger than just the 2 of them. The train pulled in slow, steam hissing from its joints like some great wounded animal. Passengers stepped down, traders, mail carriers, tired wives with wide-eyed children. And then he stepped off. Daniel Fletcher. He was tall for 14, with his father's broad shoulders and dark hair that curled stubborn at the ends. His eyes were sharp, watching everything. When he spotted Jonas, he didn't smile. He walked slow, steady, and stopped just a foot away. You're him, the boy said. Jonas nodded. I am. Daniel looked past him, straight at Clara. You his wife? I am, she said, voice calm. He blinked once. You knew about me? I do now. He gave a tight nod, like that was answer enough. And just like that, he picked up a small bag, slung it over one shoulder, and followed them to the wagon. On the ride home, no one said much. The wind blew, the sun rose, and somewhere behind them, the train whistled as it pulled away, leaving behind a truth that couldn't be outrun no more. The boy didn't speak much, not at first. He answered Clara's questions with one-word replies, eyes flicking around the room like he was inventorying the place. That first supper, he barely touched his stew. Clara noticed the way he kept one hand near his pocket, like he was holding on to something he couldn't afford to lose. Jonas did his best to make conversation. Asked about Missouri, about Miriam, about school. Daniel gave short answers, polite but guarded. When the sun dipped below the hills and the crickets took up their song, Jonas set up a cot near the fireplace. You'll sleep here for now, he said. We'll fix the shed come spring, turn it into a proper room. Daniel just nodded, set his satchel down careful, and lay back with his arms crossed over his chest like a man expecting to be run off come morning. That night, Clara lay awake staring at the wooden ceiling beams. He don't trust us, she whispered. He don't know us yet, Jonas replied. That ain't what I mean, she said. He don't trust you. Jonas didn't answer. The silence between them said more than words ever could. By the end of the first week, Clara had learned a few things. Daniel liked coffee, but only when it was scalding hot. He carved small animals out of scrap wood, and he never once asked for help. He also had a scar running from his left temple down to his cheekbone. When Clara asked about it, he stiffened. Fell, he muttered. That was all. But one morning, Clara found his satchel left open by accident. Peeking out from it wasn't clothes or books, but a small bundle of letters, wrapped in twine. The top one was signed in a woman's delicate hand. To my son, Daniel. Clara set it back down untouched, but her heart beat hard. That night she asked Jonas, Did Ruth write him? Jonas nodded slow. She left letters. Miriam kept him. Gave him to him last year. Clara's voice dropped. He's been reading his mother's words every night, but barely says two to us. He's got every right, Jonas said, voice tight. We're strangers to him. Clara didn't argue, but her heart was weary. She knew the road to trust was long, but she also knew the terrain. She taught more orphan children than she could count. But this boy, he wasn't just wounded. He was watching, weighing. One evening, when Jonas had gone to fetch water, Clara found Daniel outside, carving by lamplight. She sat near him, not saying a word, just waited. After a while, he looked up. "You Maddie's my father?" The question was like a blade drawn quiet in the dark. Clara shook her head. "No, I'm mad he kept you a secret. Mad he didn't trust me with the truth." Daniel looked back down at the wood in his hands. "He never wrote me back. Not till this year." Clara blinked. "You wrote him?" "3 letters. Then stopped. Figured he didn't want me." Clara's breath caught. "He never got those." "He said he didn't," Daniel murmured. "But I don't know what to believe." The truth sat between them, heavy and thick as smoke. "You ain't gotta trust us yet," Clara said gently. "But I ain't never gonna lie to you." Daniel didn't reply. But the next morning, Clara found one of his carvings, an owl, sitting by her sewing kit. It was rough, but carefully made. And that night, when she asked if he wanted seconds at supper, he said yes. It was the first yes that came with a smile. Weeks passed, and the snow began its slow crawl across the prairie. The Fletcher homestead stood quiet against the cold, a stubborn mark on the land. Inside, things had begun to shift, not fast, but steady-like. Daniel started talking, more at the table. He helped Jonas mend a fence line that had gone half-rotten, and even let Clara show him how to darn his socks. It was small stuff, but small things build into bigger ones, like pebbles stacking into a wall. Still, some nights, Clara would wait to find Daniel sitting by the window, watching the horizon. "You looking for someone?" she asked once. He didn't answer. One morning, while Jonas was out hunting, a stranger came riding up the lane. Lean, long-legged fella in a threadbare coat. His face was sun-baked, and he carried a satchel strapped to his saddle like it held the world's last secret. Clara stepped out, apron dusted with flour, hand already near the shotgun behind the door. The man raised both hands slow. "I ain't here for trouble," he said. "Just looking for a boy named Daniel." Clara stiffened. "What business you got with him?" The man reached into his coat, slow as molasses, and pulled out a folded letter. "His Ma Ruth was my cousin. She left this for him before she passed. Been carrying it a while." Clara took the letter, heart hammering. "What's your name?" "Ezekiel Mason," he said, "but folks just call me Zeke." She nodded toward the barn. "Jonas is out. You'll wait." Zeke dismounted, tied his horse, and leaned on the porch rail like he had all the time in the world. When Daniel saw him, his face changed. Not fear, something deeper. Recognition, maybe. "You knew her?" Daniel asked. Zeke nodded. "Knew her well. Grew up together." They sat on the porch. Clara stayed near, listening from the kitchen, heart tight in her chest. "She wrote this before she passed," Zeke said, handing over the letter. "Didn't want it mailed. Said it should come by hand." Daniel unfolded it slow. His lips moved as he read, eyes darting over the faded script. When he finished, he didn't speak, just stared out at the trees. "What did it say?" Clara asked gently. Daniel shook his head, said I should forgive. Zeke gave him a long look. She was strong, but she carried sorrow like a saddlebag. She never hated your pa, just didn't know how to fix what got broke. Later, after Zeke rode off, Daniel gave Clara the letter. "You should read it," he said. "She talks about you." Clara unfolded it with care. Ruth's handwriting was delicate, careful. "If you're reading this, Daniel, then you found your way back to him. Or he found you. Either way, I hope there's a woman in that house, and I hope she's kind. A boy needs more than blood. He needs someone who'll stay." Clara read it twice. Her throat burned. That night, after Daniel had gone to bed, Jonas sat across from her by the fire. "You think she'd hate me?" he asked. Clara looked at him long and steady. "No, but I think she'd want better than silence." Jonas nodded. "Then I'll try to be better." They sat quiet for a spell, the wind tapping at the windows, the fire crackling soft. And for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like ghosts were watching. It felt like maybe, Just maybe. They'd finally been laid to rest. The snow let up come February, leaving the land in a soggy mess of half-thawed tracks and frozen hopes. Life on the Fletcher homestead settled into a rhythm. Not a perfect one, no sir, but one that held. Daniel was changing. He laughed once when Clara burnt the biscuits, and he started calling Jonas Pa without thinking. But even as their days grew easier, Clara noticed something in Daniel's eyes, like he was carrying a secret heavier than any boy his age ought to. One morning, while Jonas rode to town for feed, Daniel followed Clara out to the henhouse. He didn't speak at first, just tossed grain in slow arcs, watching the hens peck. "You ever kill a man?" he asked, sudden as a crack of thunder. Clara's breath caught. "Why would you ask me that?" He shrugged. "Don't know. Figured you'd tell me true." Clara leaned on the shovel. "No, but I seen death. More than once." "Why?" Daniel looked down. "Kicked at the dirt. 'Cause I think maybe I did." Clara went still. "You'd better explain that, son." Daniel took a while. When the words came, they tumbled out broken and raw. "Back in Missouri. Miriam's husband. He drank too much. Hit her. Hit me sometimes. One night he was real mean, threw Miriam into the hearth. She hit her head. I thought she was dead." Clara's jaw tightened. "I grabbed the fire poker. He came at me." Daniel continued. "I don't remember swinging. But he didn't get up. Not for a long time. Miriam told the sheriff he fell. Said she slipped and he was trying to help. Nobody questioned it." Clara's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. "You did what you had to do." Daniel shook his head. "Maybe, but I still see his face at night." She put her hand on his shoulder. "That's the price of survival sometimes, but it don't make you evil." He didn't answer, but for the first time in a while, he didn't pull away. That evening, when Jonas came home, Clara pulled him aside, told him what Daniel had shared. Jonas stood silent, face like stone. Then he nodded. "I'll talk to him," he said. Later, father and son walked past the barn. Clara watched them from a window, their silhouettes framed against the pale sky. She couldn't hear their words, but when they came back inside, something had shifted. Jonas put his hand on Daniel's shoulder and didn't let go. Daniel didn't flinch. That night, Daniel sat by the fire and played a tune on Clara's old mouth harp. The notes were slow, a little crooked, but they carried. Jonas smiled. Clara wiped her hands on her apron and stood at the doorway, heart full of things she didn't know how to say. But maybe she didn't have to, because sometimes the music's enough. Spring brought a breath of warmth to the land, coaxing green out of the brown and softening the ground beneath the Fletcher's boots. Jonas plowed. Clara planted. Daniel took to building a chicken coop, whittling the beams with a carpenter's precision no one taught him. Just came natural, like he was meant for it. One morning, while Clara was up to her elbows in bread dough, a rider came. She heard the hoofbeats first, quick, sharp, and not friendly. Jonas stepped out with a shotgun balanced easy in his arms, the kind of easy that comes from knowing how to use it. The rider dismounted before the dust even settled. A man in his 50s, with a gray mustache and a belly that said he ate more than he worked. His vest had the seal of the county stitched on it. "Name's Deputy Miles," he said, voice slick with official business. "Got something I need to speak on, private-like." Clara felt the dough go cold in her hands. She wiped them and followed Jonas to the porch. "This about Daniel?" she asked, straight out. Miles looked surprised. "Sharp one, ain't ya?" "Yeah. Got a letter came from Missouri. Sheriff there sent it. Thought you ought to know. There's a bounty on a boy named Daniel Fletcher." Jonas went still. "Bounty. Says he's wanted for suspicion of murder. They ain't pressed charges yet, but someone down there's stirring the pot. A cousin, maybe. Man's brother wants justice." Clara stepped in front of Jonas. "That boy ain't running. He's rebuilding." Miles shrugged. "Ain't saying you're wrong. Just saying the law don't like loose ends." He handed over the letter, then tipped his hat and rode off. Jonas read it twice, then folded it like it might explode. "We can't send him back," Clara said, quiet but fierce. "I know." That night, Jonas sat Daniel down. No fire, no anger. Just the truth, laid bare. They know, he said. Daniel didn't blink. Then I'll go. Clara felt her chest tighten. The hell you will. Daniel's voice shook. If I stay, you'll get in trouble. Jonas leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You think this place'd be better without you? Daniel didn't answer. You're wrong, Jonas said. You're my son. That ain't changing that. Daniel looked to Clara. And you? She crossed her arms, eyes sharp. You leave. I'm coming after you with a skillet. That got a half smile out of him. They decided then they wouldn't run, but they wouldn't lay down either. Jonas would ride into town next week, speak with the magistrate, see what could be done to keep Missouri's dogs off their heels. Until then, they'd keep building. The next morning, Daniel handed Clara a carving, a sunflower, smooth and warm from his pocket. Reminds me of you, he said. Clara swallowed the lump in her throat and tucked it into the windowsill. Because sometimes hope don't shout. It just sits quiet and blooms. Jonas rode to town on a Tuesday with that folded letter tucked tight in his coat and worry sitting heavy on his shoulders. Clara watched him ride off with a straight back, but her hands trembled when she fed the chickens. Daniel worked the field that day. Quiet, focused. But Clara could tell he was listening. To the wind, to the road, to everything that might bring bad news. It came faster than they hoped. Just before sundown, a wagon pulled up the lane. Clara stepped onto the porch, shotgun already in her hands, apron still dusted with flour. The man who stepped down wasn't the law. He was worse. His name was Ellis Carr, a bounty hunter by trade, and from the way he wore his grin, thin and mean, he wasn't here to parley. Well now, he drawled, looking her over. Ain't you a surprise? Heard there was a woman here harboring a fugitive. Clara didn't flinch. Ain't no fugitives here. Just folks working to live. Ellis grinned wider. That's so. 'Cause I got a copy of this here bounty. Says otherwise. He held it up. Daniel's name scrawled across the top. Says alive or dead. But I got a soft spot for alive, long as they don't make it hard. Clara stepped down from the porch, shotgun raised. You turn around, Carr. You got no authority in this county. He chuckled. Authority's what a man takes when no one's got the stomach to stop him. From behind the barn, Daniel appeared. He didn't run, didn't hide, just walked up slow, eyes steady. That's me, he said. Daniel Fletcher. Clara turned. Get back inside. No, Daniel said, voice firm. I ain't letting him threaten you. Carr stepped forward. There's a smart boy. Let's go nice and quiet. He didn't finish. Jonas's voice rang out behind him. I wouldn't take another step. Carr spun. Jonas stood there, rifle raised, cold fury in his eyes. You don't belong here, Jonas said. And if you so much as twitch wrong, I'll plant you. Carr hesitated, then smirked. You gonna shoot me in front of a boy? Real fatherly. Only if you force my hand, Jonas said. Now get. Carr backed away real slow. You're buying trouble. Then I hope it comes with a receipt, Clara snapped. He climbed into the wagon and rode off, dust rising behind him like smoke from a fire not quite put out. Jonas lowered his rifle. Daniel didn't move. Later, after dark, Clara found him out by the coop. You all right? She asked. He nodded. Just thinking it. You don't owe the world your pain, she said softly. He looked at her, eyes full of storm and sun. But it keeps trying to take it. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Let it try. We're still here. 3 days after Carr rode off, the town's magistrate sent word. Jonas's appeal had gone through. Missouri had no legal hold over Daniel without fresh charges, and that meant they could breathe easy. But peace don't sit long in the West. That night, while Clara and Daniel read by the fire, a flame lit the horizon. At first, Clara thought it was moonlight, but then came the smell. Smoke. Dry and sharp. Jonas burst through the door. Barn's burning. They rushed outside. The flames were already licking the rafters, the sky painted orange and angry. Jonas grabbed a bucket, Daniel another. Clara ran for the well. But the fire was fast, too fast. Like it knew the barn wouldn't stand. By dawn, it was ash and smoke. The horses gone. The tools destroyed. Only the chicken coop stood, scorched but intact. Clara stood there, covered in soot, jaw clenched. This wasn't no accident. Jonas nodded. Car. Daniel stepped forward. He'll come back. No, Clara said. He never left. She pointed to the tracks behind the barn. Fresh boot prints. Too fresh. Jonas followed them into the woods, rifle raised. Found nothing. Back at the cabin, they worked in silence. Jonas hammered a new latch on the door. Clara boiled water for what little food remained. Daniel sat carving, hands steady, eyes distant. Do we run? He asked. No, Clara said. We rebuild. That night, Jonas pulled Daniel aside. Son, he said, if it comes down to it, I'll take him. Daniel frowned. I can fight. Jonas put a hand on his shoulder. I ain't letting you live the rest of your life haunted. Daniel's eyes burned. I already am. Clara came out then, her apron damp with tears she wouldn't let fall. You think we made it this far to scatter like cattle? They stood together, the three of them, the cabin behind and the blackened barn before. That night, Jonas sat with the shotgun across his lap, Clara by the window. Daniel kept the fire stoked, eyes on the shadows outside, because they knew. Come morning, Carr would be back. And this time, he wouldn't come with just words. The night stretched long. Wind clawed at the shutters, and every creak of the wood set Clara's hand closer to the rifle. Daniel didn't sleep, just carved another figure by lantern light. This one was a horse, lean and proud, like it could outrun anything. Then, as the first pale streaks of dawn cut across the hills, hoofbeats came. Not fast. Measured. 5 of them. Carr. He wasn't alone this time. 2 hired guns flanked him. Hard men, all sharp eyes and twitchy fingers. Another wagon sat further back with someone hidden under a tarp. Jonas stepped outside, rifle slung low but ready. Clara and Daniel stood on the porch behind him. Carr dismounted. His coat was cleaner than last time. His grin wasn't. You had your chance, Fletcher, he called. But now I got a witness. He waved a hand, and the tarp was pulled back. A woman sat there, older, gray-haired, hands bound in front, eyes wide with fear. Daniel went rigid. Miriam. Carr smirked. She came west to find the boy. Lucky for me. She talks more when she's scared. Jonas stepped forward. You touch her. Easy, cowboy, Carr said. Ain't laid a finger on her. Yet. Clara's voice was sharp as frost. What do you want? Carr's smile faded. The boy. You hand him over. She goes free. Simple as a handshake. Daniel stepped off the porch. Don't, Jonas growled. Daniel's face was pale, but his voice was strong. I won't let her suffer. But Clara caught his arm. We ain't handing family to a butcher. Carr raised his pistol. Last chance. Then came the crack of a rifle. Carr's hat flew off, and he staggered back. The shot hadn't come from Jonas. It came from the ridge. A lone figure stood there, rifle raised. Deputy Miles. Carr cursed, dove behind the wagon. His hired guns returned fire, bullets shattering a window. Clara dragged Daniel down. Jonas fired twice, and dropped one of the gunmen. Chaos. Gunfire. Smoke. And through it all, Miriam tumbled from the wagon, scurried toward the cabin, face streaked with blood and dirt. Clara pulled her inside. Miles shouted from the ridge. I got backup coming. The last gunman ran. Carr rose, eyes wild, blood on his cheek. He took aim at Jonas. And Daniel stepped in front. The shot never came, because Clara fired first. Carr fell, hard and fast. His pistol clattered across the dirt. Silence fell. The fire inside crackled again. Miles rode down slow, rifle still ready. You all right? He asked. Jonas nodded. We are now. Daniel stood frozen, not from fear, but shock. Clara set her rifle down. You protect your own, she said. Miriam collapsed into Daniel's arms. I tried to stop them, she whispered. Daniel held her tight. It's done. Outside, the sun finally rose. Carr was buried in a pine box behind the ridge. No one said a word over the grave, not for respect, but because some men leave this world quieter than they lived in it. Deputy Miles filed the report as self-defense, said the boy had a right to his name, and the woman a right to protect her kin. Missouri sent a letter 2 weeks later saying they'd closed the case. Life don't go back to normal after something like that. It finds a new shape. Miriam stayed in the guest room through spring, helping Clara with the garden, teaching Daniel old hymns on the harmonica. Her hands were never still, but her voice softened with each sunrise. Daniel changed too. The weight in his eyes didn't vanish, but it shifted, became something he could carry. He built a small lean-to out back and asked if he could raise goats. "They're stubborn," he said. "Like me." Clara just smiled and handed him the ledger. "Keep track of expenses." Jonas rebuilt the barn with Daniel by his side. Every nail, every beam. They worked like men building not just shelter, but a future. One night, months later, Daniel handed Clara a letter. For her, he said. It was a carving, carefully wrapped, of a woman holding a sunflower. "For Ruth," he said, "so she knows I'm all right." Claire didn't cry, but she placed it by the window, where the morning light always hit. They never stopped looking over their shoulder. That's the way it is out west. But they didn't live afraid. They lived ready. And sometimes, when the wind blew just right, Clara would step onto the porch, watching the land stretch wide and free before her. "Perfect?" Jonas asked once, as they watched Daniel chase a goat across the pasture. "No," she said, smiling. "But it's ours."